Welcome to the bunker.
Preppers, survivalists, off-gridders, homesteaders, and the like. Welcome to Top's Bunker, a podcast for preppers. Email shtf@topsbunker.com, website topsbunker.com, YouTube Top's Bunker podcast channel, and of course X and Instagram. Please check the show notes in your podcast player for a link to help support the show. There you'll find valuable products and gear and extra info on this episode. Also, please visit and join Top's Bunker Facebook group. You'll love the interaction with other preppers and like-minded folks. I want to thank you all for joining us. We got a great show for you. Tonight, we slip on our tinfoil hats and welcome back Bobby Spags to the show to help us decipher disclosure and how it affects the Prepper Survivalist community. Disclosure, there's that word again. Don't try to define it. It's bigger than Webster's definition. In today's social media, news, and the halls of Congress, disclosure is a hot topic. In order to understand disclosure, we must first understand the Black Swan Event. By definition, a Black Swan event is a highly rare, unpredictable occurrence with massive and severe, widespread consequences that is often inappropriately rationalized in hindsight, as if it could have been foreseen. These extremely rare events, lying far outside normal expectations, defy standard forecasting, causing major systemic disruptions, and dramatically impact finance, politics, science, technologies, academia, and society. A Black Swan event, for all intents and purposes, are so improbable that they should not take place. Yet occasionally they do. Covid19, possible but highly improbable. Won't happen in a modern world, yet it did, and over 7 million lives were lost. The 9/11 attacks on U.S. soil could have happened, but with multiple threat detection and stopgap technologies defending the U.S., it was highly improbable. Won't happen, yet it did. 3,000 lives ended. The New York skyline changed forever, and it had a massive impact on global economics. Black Swan events, possible but highly improbable. Disclosure is a Black Swan event. It just hasn't happened yet. 70% of Americans believe in extraterrestrial life, UFOs, UAPs, USOs, non-human intelligence, and trans-medium crafts. 49% of Americans believe that these non-human intelligence, ET and aliens, are not only real, they are in fact here amongst us and working with world leaders to coexist. Sounds a little crazy, right? Yeah, I'd agree with you. Disclosure, by definition, is the action of making new or secret information known. The President of the United States addressing the people of the world to tell them that aliens are real. That's disclosure. It's highly improbable, can't be real, never gonna happen, because it's a Black Swan event that could change the world in ways we can't even conceive of. And that's what we're talking about tonight. In case you haven't heard, there's a new documentary that came out called The Age of Disclosure. Now, it's not the movie, that new movie that's coming out. This is a documentary. It's called The Age of Disclosure. Every adult person in the world needs to see this documentary as soon as possible. Government and world leaders, from their mouths to your ears, will explain everything. The Age of Disclosure. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. Jeremy and I are joined by Bobby Spags to discuss disclosure and how it's important to the Prepper Survivalist community. Now, let's get to it.
Are we finally on the eve of a true age of disclosure on aliens? Well, President Trump now giving the green light for government files on extraterrestrial life to be released to the public, posting on Truth Social that due to tremendous interest, he is directing government agencies to begin identifying and releasing files related to extraterrestrial life and UFOs.
Are aliens real?
They're real, but I haven't seen them, and they're not being kept in... what is it?
Area 51?
Area 51. There's no underground facility unless there's this enormous conspiracy and they hid it from the President of the United States.
Barack Obama said that aliens are real.
Have you seen any evidence of non-human visitors to Earth?
Well, he gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that.
So aliens are real?
Well, I don't know if they're real or not. I can tell you he gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that. He made a big mistake. He took it out of classified information. No, I don't have an opinion on it. I never talk about it. A lot of people do. A lot of people believe it. I may get him out of trouble by declassifying.
What do you or the president know about UFOs? Can you share? I hear that the president has something in the queue to share with us about all of this. I remember Eric being like, all right, like, what can you tell us? And he was a little hesitant to give us any real info, which makes me think like he's got a lot of info out there and he's waiting for the right time to drop it. And maybe this is gonna be the time, because I keep seeing all these stories about how he's got some like UFO speech that he's got queued up, and we all should just kind of sit back and wait.
Sure. Bobby Spags. I am the Vice President of Midwest Preparedness Project, and I sit on the board of directors for the charity MWPP Foundation. Our goal is to bring preparedness and homesteading into the mainstream, to push it past the way that preparedness used to be viewed in the mid-90s to early 2000s, and make it just another Saturday. And so that's what I do in the communities that we're currently involved in. Other than that, Army 15 years, United States House of Representatives for 8 years, working for a senior member of Congress, doing ICE, immigration, Department of Homeland Security casework, and mercenary for 3 years, contractor for 3 years. And so I've just kind of been all over the place doing all sorts of interesting things for the last 25 years.
Which is why when Buddy mentioned that you might be able to take us down a few rabbit holes. So tonight we are talking, obviously, about disclosure. What is disclosure? These days, when you say disclosure, it's all about the UFOs. Now, they're not called UFOs anymore. They're called UAPs, which is unidentified aerial phenomenon. Mm-hmm. There is UAPs. There's USOs, which are really one of the bigger things happening right now, which is the underwater submersibles, something and others. They're UFOs that go, that they're multi-medium, I think that's how they say it, crafts, which can actually go air, space, and ocean. Now, why is it relevant to Prepper Survivalists? Because in my brain, disclosure of non-human intelligence, aliens, or the technology from non-human intelligence, or our adversaries having this technology, even if it's not aliens, and what we're actually seeing, because there is stuff happening. We know that for a fact. And our adversaries have them, we're in big trouble. And it could be just as bad as an EMP, a CME, a nuclear war, a societal collapse, a financial collapse, Yellowstone exploding. It could be as big as any of those things, which is why I choose to talk about it on a Prepper Survivalist type of podcast.
And I agree. I think that this is my opinion about the whole thing. If there are, in fact, aliens, alien technology and those kinds of things, and they came out and just finally said it, they were like, yeah, they're real. They're out there. I think that a third of the world would be like, yeah, cool. We already knew. The rest of the people who never believed would frickin' melt. Like the planet would split in half and they'd be like, oh my gosh, we're not alone. What do I do? I'm conflicted about it. Do I think it would be neat? Okay. Yeah. But my personal opinion is I like to wish, but verify kind of thing. Like I want to know, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know what to believe anymore anyways, because I don't believe anything until it's actually happening or it's already happened. So
I think you're pretty close on that, Jeremy. Most of the world, including the very religious people, are going to be just perfectly fine. There's going to be a segment of the population of the world, if it was to come out that extraterrestrial, non-human intelligent beings are here on Earth, they're going to freak out. There's going to be people that just mentally can't handle it. We'll have to deal with that. That's going to be an issue. There's going to be the cognitive dissonance out there where people are just it's just going to go right past them, and they're going to talk about what smoothie they're getting because their brain can't handle what's happening. For me, I believe that it's happening. I believe what's going on from everything I've seen, and it's been happening for a long time. So for me, we're not really in any sort of danger right now. What I want to know about is where the technology is coming from and who's paying for it. That's my thing, because if taxpayer dollars are paying for what we're seeing in the skies, that's a bunch of bullshit, because we should have it and we should be benefiting from it, from that technology.
Yeah.
Spags, what do you think?
There's a lot to unpack from all of that, but first I'm going to agree with Jeremy about how he used the term belief. I think we have to set terms early on in a conversation like this. So if you hear me say tonight, I don't believe something, that's not the same as me saying I disbelieve it. It means I have not yet been given enough evidence to hardline say I believe A, B, or C. If I say if I absolutely reject something or I disbelieve it, that means I've seen enough evidence to say that's not true. And if I say I believe something, that means I've seen enough evidence to believe it is true. And so I think we have to define that term very quickly, because we're in such weird tinfoily woo-woo when it comes to this, that the minute you say believe or disbelieve or I don't believe, everyone jumps on it and they interject their own opinion onto what you just said as opposed to what you meant. There are things I believe in, there are things I don't believe in, and there are things I disbelieve. And so if I say I don't believe something, it means I'm open to being convinced otherwise, but I have yet to be convinced. So with that being said, when it comes to this particular topic, I do believe that we are seeing a very unique set of phenomena happening. I am unconvinced, and so therefore I do not believe that it is extraterrestrial in the classic definition of the word, meaning little green men from Mars, the Greys, whatever. I think that there is some truth to all of it, but I think that there's a lot of proof that has to be shown. So I will be willingly say that there are certain things taking place in the skies and oceans around us, and I think that it is possible that it comes from other species. But I would say, as an esoteric Christian, as someone who comes from that background of esoteric Christian belief, I think that there's a whole nother level to this that we have to discuss that is not being discussed by very many people, and that is the interdimensional aspect of what's taking place. And I don't think that that's the exact same thing as little gray dudes from Mars.
Me personally, I am not a follower of the Bible. I believe in God and I follow that, but I don't follow the Bible. That's just something I don't do. And that being said, there are things in the Bible that say as above, so below, or,
right.
God created the earth and the heavens above.
Correct.
So that to me, that statement right there means the earth and every single other thing that is in this entire universe that we can and cannot see.
Yes.
Created by God, period. So if there are other species out there, and I absolutely believe that there are, they're under the same umbrella.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Here's something that I've been wondering since we were getting ready to talk about this. All of the years, and I'm talking about, let's just say all of the years since the very first movie that came out in regards to aliens, from just imagine the old school movies back in the 50s and 60s up till now. Do you see that as kind of and we've talked about it before, it is a sort of conditional programming. It is a building a normalcy bias so that if and when this thing does, truly come out, it's like, yeah, whatever. Like kind of like the JFK thing,
Yes.
That's my question to you.
100% agree with Jeremy. I think that the timing of the original stuff that was coming out, and if you look at the original stuff, it was coming out when it was still the silent movies. The whole Jules Verne stuff.
1930s.
Right. So I think that there were people who were in tune with whatever this phenomena is long before Roswell. But I think Roswell was a tipping point that forced the military industrial complex at the time to begin we can call it slow disclosure.
I prefer slow disclosure. Thank you for saying that.
Yes, it was a slow disclosure, and I think that we have been conditioned from probably about the 1930s on to accept the fact that we are not alone, even on our own planet. And so, yes, I agree with Jeremy. It's been 100% conditioning, and it's the slow frog boiling method where it's just a little bit every year. You remember the stuff, it's a cookbook. They're going to eat us, and then the Twilight Zone and the Outer Limits and all of that stuff. Plan 9 from Outer Space, all those horrible movies that were black and white that we used to watch on reruns in the 1980s.
They were awesome. Come on.
Awesome movies. They were I call them horrible, but they were
The Day the Earth Stood Still. Come on.
Yes, they were horribly awesome. They were the best movies of our lifetime.
Right.
Now, if you think about it, though, I mean, and the movie thing, let's not even go into that. So 1938, War of the Worlds was broadcast
on the radio.
Right?
Yep. Scared the hell out of people.
And people thought it was real. Like there was no lead up into like the broadcast. They just started going into it.
Yep.
And the movie was made, I want to say in 53. Yeah, 53.
Yeah, the first one. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you think about the fact that this has gone back to 1938.
Yeah.
And, it's 2026 and we're still doing movies about aliens. It's like, who came up with the idea? Like, who came up with the idea to say that this unexplained thing must be from somebody in the outer space? Because, back during that time frame, if you think about the fact that in 1938, the country itself looked a lot different than it does now. And they were pitching this stuff back then. Like, you're talking about a slow, buildup. This has been exceptionally slow. This is even slower than JFK.
It's interesting because before the 1930s, and let's say, I think it was 40 something when Roswell happened, I'm not sure. But before that, those people weren't scared. Those people weren't talking about, death and destruction from above. They were like, yeah, this craft was floating over like a hot air balloon. It landed. Some people came out. They were dressed really funny and they greeted us and everything was really great. And they got back in their ship and they floated away. It wasn't like, War of the Worlds. We all know Roswell happened. Was it aliens or was it this? We don't know. But when it first happened, immediately it came out that it was extraterrestrials. It was a spacecraft and there were 3 beings and they were found dead and they have it all. And the military knows all about it. The military actually made the statement to the newspaper. The very next day, they pulled it back and they said that it was a hot air balloon. And from that point on, right then and there, that's when the conspiracy started happening. We don't really know what it was, but something definitely crashed out there. Now, why right now am I wanting to bring this up on the podcast? Well, something interesting happened this week. Barack Obama was on the Brian Tyler Cohen podcast, and he asked him, are the aliens real? And Obama answered very quickly without any kind of confusion. He said, they're real, but I haven't seen them, and they're not being kept at Area 51.
Yes.
Okay. He wasn't joking, laughing, or anything. He was straight up said that. About 48 hours later, 2 days later, the internet exploded and Obama posted a clarification, let's call it, of what he said. He said, well, statistically speaking, something to the effect, whatever, life is likely out there, but the chances we've been visited are low. And I saw no evidence during my presidency. So he backed it up. Okay. Now, what happened just hours later is really when this thing took off. When Pete Ducey from Fox was on Air Force One, walked up to Trump, and he asked Trump, hey, Obama said that aliens are real, and they're not being held at Area 51. What's going on? And Trump said, well, and he was, first of all, if you watch the clip on YouTube, Trump was mad. You can look at his face. He was stern. He was pissed. Trump likes to be the first at everything. He doesn't like to get trumped. Let's call it that. He likes to be the number one guy that does everything. He was mad. And he said, That was classified information. He shouldn't have said that. He's in really big trouble. And Pete Ducey said, oh, so aliens are real. He says, well, I mean, I don't know, but that's classified information. And Obama knows he shouldn't have released that. He's in really big trouble now. Pete Ducey said, well, what about declassifying them? And Trump said, maybe I will declassify them to get him out of trouble now. Look, the one thing about Trump is he wears his emotions on his sleeve. He just says shit that comes to his mind. He doesn't think about it beforehand. He just says it, which is why a lot of people don't like him. I love him for it because I'm from that area of, New York, New Jersey, and I understand the people that talk like Trump. I know the passion. I know people from up there think that people down here talk funny. People down here think people up there talk funny. But I get him. And I can say this right now. He was not expecting that question, and he just answered it on the fly. And if you look at his staff behind him, they freaked out. In Aurora, Texas, I'm not sure what year it was. It was way back then when all this other stuff happened. Supposedly, a flying saucer crashed into a windmill, and the townspeople, this was all in the Dallas Morning News, I believe, newspaper. The townspeople collected the body of the alien, okay, and they actually buried him in their cemetery. I've been to the cemetery. Rhonda used to live right near it. It's an actual thing. Now, the gravestone was stolen many decades ago, and nobody really knows exactly where it is right now. There are people that have tested the grounds and they found different anomalies in the ground. Then they want to pull it up, but that actually happened and it was normal. They gave this thing a Christian burial and they buried it, like they should. They're respectfully. My point is, we don't know what happened at Roswell. So, Spags, I would ask you, do you think that the Air Force was covering up the actual thing that happened at Roswell, or did they explode it as a misinformation or disinformation to actually get people worried, like a false flag type of thing?
Yes to both. And here's what I mean. In the pre-Roswell days, we had these kind of interactions and nobody showed fear, that it was normal. It was every day. Things were kind of seen in typical light and nothing was fear-based. We have to also remember that when Roswell happened, it was at the kickoff of the Cold War. And so what was once mundane to some people and what was once normal to some people and what was once potentially a non-threatening encounter to some people, I think that at the time, the Department of War desperately was trying to backwards engineer things to gain an advantage over the Soviets. And so, while, yes, I do believe 100% that the Air Force covered up what happened at Roswell, I also, at the same time, believe that they covered it up in such a way to make the Russians fear us because now we've recovered weapons-grade technology from beyond the planet Earth. We showed the bomb off at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and that scared the Russians for about 5 minutes, and then the Russians began their own bomb program. We showed space technology, and then the Russians pulled ahead of us in space technology, and they were ahead of us for a good decade. They had all the firsts. And so I think America had to prove that we had something else during that same time period, and so we had to engage in fear-mongering, if for nothing else, knowing that the Russians were watching what we were doing. They watched our media, they watched our TV, they had assets within the United States that were monitoring everything we were doing. And so if the Russians started reporting back to Moscow that the Americans have recovered alien technology, and we think it might actually be legitimate because they walked it back within 24 hours, meaning they're covering something up they don't want anyone to know about, now we have to think twice. And now we have to start diverting our own funds towards other programs other than just the bomb. And I think that was probably the motivational foundation to why the Air Force or the Army Air Corps and the Department of Defense probably started putting out the information that they did quickly quickly, retracting it. I think that all of that was planned. I think all of it was spur of the moment. I think it was a opportunistic move to make the Soviets fear us when at a time when nobody really had the clear advantage.
Man, that's beautifully said. It's self-preservation of the country is basically what's happening there. And it was very smart of the military to go that route, especially since you have this Department of War, as what it was called back then. That would be exactly what they would do. They would use any kind of a situation, even if they had to manufacture one, to get the Russians to believe that we were as powerful, if not more powerful than they were. One of the reasons why we kicked it into gear for the moon landing program, all that.
Correct.
So, so let's go from there to. I'd love to start the whole Tic Tac thing, but we did that on the last episode. So I want to say right off the bat that there are things up in the skies all over the place that are doing things that we can't do. You've heard this on the news, all of you. I'm sure you have. If you haven't, check it out. But we've got these crafts that are being not just sighted on, but engaged with our very best pilots, our very best fighter pilots. And they are seeing them with their eyes. They're seeing them on their instruments. They're seeing them on the instruments on the I don't know what you call them, but the host ships that that they're off of the carriers, and they're doing things that we don't have the technology for. There's no wings. There's no propulsion. They move tens of thousands of miles per hour in a split second from one location to another. They can go right down into the ocean, right back up without missing a beat, without slowing down, doing things that are absolutely next generation or way above next generation technology. These folks that are in the military, generals, 5-star generals, jet pilots now jet pilots aren't just like, guys who fly planes. These guys are the best of the best. These are the people that become, if they want to, become astronauts. They're very good at what they do. And when they see these things and they tell you, look, this happened, it's up there, we have to believe them. We just do. So the question comes to, are they ours or are they something else? Where did the technology come from? Who paid for the technology? These are very, very important questions. Now you've got, I'm sure you all have heard of David Grush. He was a former Air Force intelligence officer. He worked on the UAP task force, which is the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force. There was a task force that taxpayer money paid for to look into and find out what these things are. Period. You paid for it. Our taxes paid for it. It happened. It's still happening. He was on that task force. Well, he testified under oath in July of, I think it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago, 2023, to Congress that the U.S. has been running a multi-decade crash retrieval and reverse engineering program since the 1930s. He says that we have non-human craft and non-human biologics. Now he was denied access to these programs, the deeper side of these programs, even though that was literally his job, was to look into them. He was denied access to them. He said that he would have reprisals from the Pentagon, that they threatened his life, they threatened his family, and other things, and which is why he left and became a whistleblower. Some pretty big stuff. We've got Rear Admiral Tim, I'm probably going to mess this up, Gallaudet or Gallaudet. He was former head of the Navy Oceanography. He right now is saying that the real story is actually underwater. Tim Burchett, who's a senator, is he senator or congressman? I can't remember. He's leading this whole thing about these objects being from underwater. Since 2025, there's an app called the Enigma app. You can get it on your phone. They logged in over 9,000 USOs, that's underwater craft, reports, within 10 miles of U.S. coast. That's just in a year's time. They have objects that are entering and exiting the water, speeds that we can't do. glowing orbs, massive structures, three football fields large. We're talking massive structures going in and out of the water. Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet says he witnessed them. Not only does he witness them, they reported on them. They've got everything logged on this stuff, and he calls it a potential world-changing national security issue. He says that the DoD is not being transparent about it. So,
well, what was the movie? They're an underwater oil rig, and the Navy SEALs come on board. Yeah,
The Abyss.
The Abyss. I think. I mean, do I? I'm
you
trying
speculate.
Well, I'm trying to think of the right way to word it. Everybody looks up. They think space, but the moment you go into space, if you're not protected, pretty much everything that exists turns into a airless, dying bag of ice. You go into the water and you are crushed literally by pressure. And the things that has been seen lately, let's just say 10 years, everybody knows scientifically that the megalodon can exist, but they have footage of a shark, and it's not even a whale shark. It's a predatory type shark that is impossibly large. I think that the real undiscovered country is underwater, because we've been out in space now, since the 60s, 50s? We've got a craft that have been pushed out there so far that they're no longer even transmitting. Like a transmission from some of the oldest ones would take 100 years to get here. But man, underwater, for me personally, that's like the big mystery, because they've been to the bottom of the Mariana Trench with, machines. There's no way possible that a human could make it down there. But some of the stuff that they have found at the bottom of the Mariana Trench makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So as far as like alien stuff, regardless of if it's up above or down below, I would like to see more from the ocean, because some of this, I think we've only literally like just barely scratched the surface of the actual ocean. And there's more water on this planet than there is land.
Yeah, we've mapped just a tiny fraction of the actual floor of our ocean, whereas we have mapped 100% of Mars, of the surface of Mars, and the surface of the moon. 100%. But we've only witnessed a fraction of our, because we just can't see it. We don't know what's down there. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, if you've ever taken a look at Google Earth, or just and come out and start like looking at how they, they show the ocean. If you put it on like a 3D map image, it's freaking crazy down there. I mean, it's insane. The fact that if you were to go to the deepest part of the ocean and take the world's tallest building, and it would take like 300 or 400 of them stacked one on top of the other just to even get back up to the light, that's insane to me. That's incredibly insane. It just doesn't make logically. They talk about going to the core of the earth and it's these many miles and these many miles. They can't even get to the bottom of the ocean to figure it out correctly. It's like, how in the hell do you expect us to believe that you know everything about the core of the earth, but you can't tell me what's at the bottom of the trench? I don't think so. I don't think so.
Spags, take us down a rabbit hole.
All right. So when I worked for the United States House of Representatives, one of the things I did was FEMA casework. And one of the biggest political issues at the time, this would have been 2010, was the National Flood Insurance Program, the NFIP, I believe. And the reason that this was such a big deal was because FEMA had worked with NASA and the Air Force to use satellites to basically they shot lasers from space and did that whole like grid thing where they just scanned the entire earth. Mostly they claimed the United States, and it was how they found any property that was supposedly within what was called the 100-year floodplain. And the big commercial push was if you had a property where even one post of your raised deck off the back of your house was in this floodplain, you would have to pay for national insurance or national floodplain insurance policies for
Damn,
your
what a
property.
scam.
This happened before the ACA. This was actually the first federally mandated insurance program that existed that nobody really talked about. So here's the interesting part. I actually went to Kansas City, to the Fusion Center in Kansas City, which happens to be at the airport, at the Air Traffic Control Center. That's where the Fusion Center there is, at a KCI. And I was sitting in a high-level meeting with other people. So there were representatives from FEMA, Department of Homeland Security. Both state senators had representatives. All 4 congressional House districts had a representative, of which I was one of those 4. And the person giving the presentation was talking about the scanning technology that was used to map out the United States to determine whether or not your property was in a floodplain. And the whole thing was being sold based on floodplaining, flood maps, properties that bordered major rivers, lakes, reservoirs, that sort of thing. But one of the comments made during that presentation was, and it was just a very quick comment, that 82% of the resources were of this scanning mission that was used for this insurance program was dedicated to deep sea and deep oceanography in accordance with NOAA, with the North American Atlantic or the North American or Oceanic Association. So NOAA gave and prescribed criteria to FEMA on what they wanted scanned. And they tried to glaze over this bullet point very quickly, and they moved on to more stuff. And a bunch of us raised our hands up and we were like, wait a minute, this is about floodplaining. Why are you scanning the middle of the Pacific? Or why are you scanning the middle of the Atlantic Ocean? Why are you scanning stuff by Antarctica? If this is all about floodplaining for the United States, for FEMA to charge insurance premiums to people, what's going on here? And the minute one of the senatorial offices, their delegate raised their hand. I raised my hand. And one other member from the House, their delegate raised their hand. We all pretty much had the same question. Like, if 80% of your resources were dedicated to scanning the oceans of the world, how does that have any bearing on insurance floodplaining? And they got very quiet, almost like they shouldn't have said it. And they tried to just give us a passing answer of, well, we work with other agencies to provide information. Satellites pass over points A to B anyway, so we went ahead and scanned to save money, is the answer essentially given. But when you're looking at a program that essentially put hundreds of thousands of people out of their homes because they could no longer insure their homes, they couldn't resell their homes because they were in these 100-year floodplains. So the federal government would come in and buy the properties, with different organizations. Most notably today would be BlackRock, that they're using to purchase these properties at pennies on the dollar because they're uninsurable. So on one hand, you have the government doing that, but at the same time, the vast majority of the resources were being used to scan the oceans with the same program.
So what were they looking for?
They never said. They would not answer further questions. They just kept saying, well, we're in cooperation with NOAA, we're in cooperation with the Department of Defense, we're in cooperation with the U.S. Navy. And they started, name dropping a bunch of 3-letter agencies, and we're just doing this and this. If the satellite's going to pass over anyway, we might as well get our biggest bang for the buck. But the thing was, this was all being funded through FEMA. This was all being done through FEMA, and yet most of what they were doing had nothing to do with the continental United States.
FEMA has that type of budget?
FEMA has the largest budget in skunkworks. FEMA is the only agency other than the executive branch of government that can declare martial law. And so any agency that has the ability to come in and take over literally everything is kind of the umbrella agency for a lot of funding. And so FEMA itself might not actually be doing this, but FEMA's the one with the budget. And so if you have misdirection within the budget, then congressionally, we as staffers had no way to actually look at where the money was going, because we're told, well, we're working with this agency, this agency, this agency. Okay, well, give me the flow chart of where the money comes from. Well, it's all in the discretionary spending budget. There's no way to look at where that went. That's discretionary per department heads or regional heads or special interest heads based on, subcommittees in Congress. So it's all hidden beneath multiple layers all the time.
Well, I know how I feel about FEMA. They can squarely kiss both halves of my ass. That's how I feel about them.
I 100% agree with you. After dealing with those assholes for 8 years, I will tell you they were the most difficult agency to work with.
Well,
And I was the guy helping people who were former felons get their gun rights back through the FBI. That was easier than dealing with FEMA.
but that's interesting that you mentioned Antarctica, because right when you said that, I was actually looking at it, Google Earth. And we have some pretty amazing technology now. And again, I don't know if you've ever noticed, but the ocean itself is scarred. But it's scarred in a really weird way. It's scarred in straight lines in so many places along the bottom of the ocean that we know very little about. And this is supposed to be, the blue ocean. And I'm looking at it, and right here off the coast of Mexico, there's a bunch of squares at the bottom of the ocean. I mean, I'm not much for geometry, but I know a square when I see one.
Right angles do not happen in nature.
No.
What's really interesting, you bring this up. When I was still trying to dabble in the YouTube world, doing the whole YouTube content creation thing, a couple years ago, I actually made a video about this where you could go on Google Earth, or I guess it was actually Google Maps at the time. And if you went up north of Europe, if you look at Google Maps, all of the ocean is pretty much airbrushed, as are vast majorities of Antarctica, the Arctic, all of this sort of stuff. Like, it's all airbrushed. And Google uses the reasoning that pixelization would cost too much money, and it would be way too heavy for the processing of your average home computer to be able to see everything in real time. And so the oceans, being as large as they are pretty much just kind of blanketed with these, low resolution airbrushed sections.
Yeah.
But there was a few times in 2023 and in 2022 where there were these lines that appeared north of Europe. And you could tell that the actual photograph of what was underneath that airbrush was like a pixel line running straight up glitched. And you could actually look and you could see the white of the snow beneath the airbrush blue of Google Maps. And so I made this whole video, and I had like the X-Files theme music in the background and all this other stuff just for fun. And I showed these lines, and some of these places, the pixelization zoomed out to the left and right of the line extensively, and you would see mountains, snow-covered mountains, and then all of a sudden a giant black box, a perfect black box just covering a section of the northern portion of the globe.
That's a redaction.
That's a redaction. And if you looked through, there was one particular line that appeared to the untrained eye to be 1 pixel wide, and it just ran straight north to south. But if you followed it, you could see what looked like you were looking through a crack in a window at mountains and snow, and then you would just see black here, black there, black here, black there. So it's like there's a dual level of redaction going on. You've got the airbrush thing that they use, that they claim, lowers, resolution rates and makes it where you can look at this in real time without crashing your computer. But then there's the second layer, mostly over the Arctic and the Antarctic and the ocean, where there's black boxes beneath that layer of airbrushing. So if anyone ever gets bored and just wants to pour a bourbon and get on Google Maps and just start looking, I suggest you go north of Europe and just start looking around. Same in Canada, go north of Canada and just go look. You'll see what I'm talking about.
Have either one of you guys seen the new movie that just came out, The Age of Disclosure?
Not yet.
I have not.
Okay.
No.
Rhonda and I just went ahead and watched it this past weekend. It's absolutely brilliant. You have to watch this. This is not something for entertainment. This is like news. You really do need to watch this thing. They did an unbelievable job, but it's on Amazon Prime. I think it's down to like $14 now. Very well worth every single penny. You're not going to see UFOs. You're not going to see UAPs. You might see a little clip here or there. That's nothing. But that's not what it's about. It's about the money flow. It's about the lie. It's about all of the evidence and the people behind it. And you're going to see people on there like Marco Rubio, okay, who is the Secretary of State for the United States of America. He's Trump's left-hand man, if you think about it. He speaks with Trump every single day. He was on this show saying emphatically, we have something here that needs to be disclosed immediately. There's craft. It's happening in the oceans. It's happening in the skies. And there's a lot of things that are not being told to the public that have to be told to the public. Not just him. So many other like 5-star generals and admirals and congressmen and senators, people from all over the place. It's what do they call that? From both sides of the aisle.
Bipartisan.
I'm sorry, my brain. Bipartisan. Exactly. Chuck Schumer actually agreed with Trump for the very first time in forever or never this week on, ordering these people that they've got to release the information. Across the board, they really went heavy on the underwater. There's more of a thought process going towards not extraterrestrial, but interterrestrial.
Right.
Mm.
Well, Keith, during Trump's first administration, what was the only thing he got passed through both houses of Congress with almost a 99%? It was Space Force. It was the only thing he got passed that almost had complete agreement by both houses of Congress and both parties was to do that. And the irony is that the vast majority of the satellites in the Space Force program are not looking out. They're looking down. And I'll let you conclude from that what you want to conclude.
I want to talk about the drone thing. You said you might have some information on that?
Yeah. During the whole, right between the time that Donald Trump won his second term and the inauguration, we had that period of time where there were these swarms of UAPs that were being seen all around the.
Can I stop you real quick?
Yeah.
Trump said when he was on his campaign, while that was happening, that he would get to the bottom of it, and that would be one of the first things he would let us know about. And when he became president, he actually instructed the secretary, his secretary, what do they call it, the White House secretary, press secretary, and she said, Trump knows about it. There's nothing to see here, basically, and don't worry about it. Everything's under control.
Yes.
That does not sound like Trump to me. That sounds like Trump found out something and now cannot tell us.
What I can tell you, and again, I will not disclose my sources, but I still have friends who are within the teams, and I still have friends on active duty. I have friends still, I mentioned earlier what I did for Congress. So my pedigree, the agencies I worked with. So I still have quite a few of those people who are still around, and even some of the newer people that are still around that I talk to regularly. During the run-up to Trump's second White House victory, there was actually a fair amount of radiological material that went missing from the Northeast. And you could actually go to the Federal Registry. Like there are all these websites that basically house the the foundation to get federal contracts. So you can go to these if you want to go get a contract with the federal government. You go to these websites and you can bid on contracts, or you have to put in reports based on the contracts you get. There was an ungodly amount of radiological material that went missing for about a 2-month period. And all of this is open source. You can go back and find all of it. There was an ungodly amount of radiological.
Are we talking about uranium?
Yes.
Like to make bombs?
Some of this stuff was like benign, like places that make watches, and they put tritium on the watch hands. All the extra tritium that gets dumped and has to be federally disposed of under certain federal guidelines because it is a radiological product or byproduct anyway. A whole bunch of this stuff across an entire spectrum of industry went missing, unaccounted for. And this was about the same time that the drum was starting to be beaten about Iran. And what we saw at that time, and this is coming from two sources of mine, one from Mannheim, Germany, and one from Istanbul, and well, I guess three, one from New York City as well. There were a horde of drones that we controlled that were launched based on AI algorithm, and they were sniffer drones, specifically flying in preordained, pre-programmed patterns to try to find this material before it could be gone forever. Because these materials put off a specific signature that can be seen by certain technologies that we have in space and aircraft and submarines and, the plethora of things. The point is, there was a bunch of radiological material that went missing during this period. And it was the same period where certain sources were telling us that we were going to have to go to war with Iran. And so there were rumors at the time of Chinese motherships coming out of the Atlantic Ocean, launching ridiculous amounts of drones that were causing all of this UAP activity that we were seeing over New Jersey, New York, even as far in as Pennsylvania and some other places. Turns out a lot of that information was partially true. There was radiological material that went missing. There was aircraft and submerged craft that we did confirm came from China, but there were also better technologies that came from us. And a lot of what was seen over the eastern seaboard, the northern eastern seaboard at that time, was actually a UAP on UAP, if you will, or a drone on drone, real world Cold War between us and China. The thing is, none of the technologies being used came from Raytheon. None of the technologies being used came from DARPA.
That was my next question. Are we talking DARPA, or what are we talking about here?
This was extra DARPA. This was outside of DARPA, outside of Raytheon, outside of Boeing. These were things that we have had for a while. And this, again, this is firsthand information coming to me from the people that I know who said we were using things that the Department of Defense does not have access to combat things that China was using, that their Department of Defense does not have access to find this radiological material, because the fear was that Iranian agents within the United States were trying to build a dirty bomb to hit the inaugural address of Donald Trump when he hit his second term. Now, it never happened, which means whatever was going on, we can assume from that information was successful. We won, whatever that means, whatever that looks like. But what I do know is we had a billion things moving around in the sky that was being captured by Ring doorbell cameras, cell phones, police dash cams, and then all of a sudden it stopped. So again,
and political leaders from the different areas of New Jersey and New York could not get any information on it. They were locked out.
It was either that or they were in straight denial. They were like, "Oh yeah, these are information. These are news drones. These are airport drones being used for airport." They were making up so many bullshit stories that you could absolutely see right through. Or they were like, "We aren't being cooperated with by anybody." So it was one extreme or the other.
I thought that they said that it was a very small amount and that couldn't possibly be what they were looking for. But you're getting information that you feel you trust, right?
Yes. I'm getting information from people that I would consider to be within my innermost circle. And they said that what was being said on the news about the extraordinarily small, amounts of this stuff was not true. That the amount of stuff that went missing. And here's the funny thing. A large portion of what missing supposedly went missing from what was being discarded from medical facilities, from like X-ray facility,
Sure, yeah, right.
X-ray rooms, whatever. Right. So now I'm not an expert in all things fissile, fusion and all that stuff. I don't know very much about that at all. What I do know is that the people I do know who know something about it said that the stories that were being put out on the contractor web pages were misinformation. That the real story was that there was an actual amount of radiological material that went missing from multiple locations based on people that over the past 10 to 15 years have basically gotten into positions within our own government to make it happen.
So did they ever find the radioactive material that you know of?
I was never told whether they found it or not. What I will say is anytime something enters the news cycle and then mysteriously ends means that it's probably a closed case.
Yeah, it did mysteriously end. I mean,
It
now I know
stopped
people are
hearing about it.
seeing. Yeah, we stopped hearing about it. Now I know we're seeing and hearing things, sporadically around the area. People are still seeing a few drones here or there. I know over across the pond, they were having some issues with them, this and that, and still are. But not like it happened in New Jersey. Man.
No,
that
but
was crazy.
The most interesting comment made to me by one of my very best friends was the technology we used was not something the DoD had, and the technology China was using was not something their equivalent.
Okay. So that being said, and when you said that, it immediately sparked my brain as well. So my question is it this technology that the DoD can't get their hands on, or they just don't happen to have in their arsenal?
It was presented as it was not created by them.
Okay.
This wasn't something that was dreamed up in a DARPA lab. This wasn't something that was dreamed up by Raytheon. This was something external to our normal process of building technology.
And it might not even be an advanced technology. It might just be something it's out there and people don't really have a use for.
Correct. Or something that we've had and we've been sitting on for a long time, or something that we've received from out there or underneath, wherever. It was never made clear. It was just basically put to me that the Department of Defense didn't create this technology, neither did China's Department of Defense. What we were using to find the material and what they were using to counteract us to find it first did not come from the Department of Defense and did not come from their Department of Defense. So again, nothing that confirms anything other than it didn't come from the Pentagon. It didn't come from Xi Jinping. And again, make of that what you will. There's a lot you can read between the lines, but it is certainly interesting material.
So let's go. Let's kind of wrap it up a little bit here. If Trump, if his orders actually deliver, and I'm talking not redacted stuff, I'm talking the full files of everything that has to do with the Tic Tacs and non-human intelligence and whatever it is, whatever it explains. The questions are, what changes? Are we talking about a new energy source? Are we talking about better for society? Are we going to have access to it? Will there be societal panic? What about a revolution in tech? What about a war just in tech alone? You saw what happened between Russia and the United States, back in the day when we were going to the moon. We fought like hell to be the best. What happens when we want to be the best at the technology too? These are questions I have. Hard to answer, right?
It is. I think that of course, we always go back to Russia and the US, but I think that when you start talking about us and them and the race, thinking about Russia and the United States, and let's just say China, I think that thinking of those three just by themselves, I think that's a little bit of a misnomer. I think that some of the little guys really need to start getting looked at.
100%.
There's a whole bunch of talk about, especially now more than ever, who really pulled off 9/11. I don't want to go down that hole because that's 14 shows right there. However,
oh boy,
there are some people who very, very strongly believe that it was actually a Mossad operation.
Yeah.
There's compelling evidence that actually points to that.
Yep.
And a lot of people don't want to acknowledge that. And I don't want to get Clintoned here at my house. However,
222 bullets to the back of the skull equals a suicide.
Death by hanging by shotgun.
We are on the same wavelength, you and I, Jeremy.
I try not to dwell on it as much as I used to, because I used to doom scroll to the nth. Like, yeah. I was there, man. I also hope that the day one in particular old man dies, we'll finally know some truths, George Soros. I mean, but I think that
My man.
I think that there is literally a handful of people on this globe that really know everything.
Well, it's like they say in the age of disclosure is that, the president of the United States should know everything. But the point is they say, no, presidents are temporary.
Yep.
I guess what I would say, for me, nothing changes because I always prep for the worst. So for me, I don't prep for one thing. I prep for the worst in every single case out there. Losing a job, getting into a car accident, getting sick, not being able to provide, the world ending, Tiawaki, the CME, the EMP, all that stuff. My brain always goes to the very worst case scenario. The technology that I've been seeing that they're talking about, to me, could be the worst case scenario, especially if our adversaries get a hold of it, and they do. So, Spags, take it away. Tell us what you think in closing.
I couldn't have said it better than what you just did. At the end of the day, what makes us different in today's generation of preparedness is we're no longer the reactive, fear-based, I'm going to stack beans and rice to the ceiling and wonder why I have scurvy 2 years after the EMP. Right? So remember, when the military goes to war, you train for 12 to 24 months, you deploy, and you fight for 9 months to 12 months, and then you come home. During that fight period, you're not training anymore. So preppers, preparedness-based people, homesteaders, survivalists, bushcrafters, whatever you want to call yourself, understand that right now we are at war. The time to train is over. And so you should not be looking at who your enemy is based on the Illuminati, the lizard people,
Hell yeah,
aliens, Godzilla stomping through Tokyo, whatever. We are literally fighting weather falling out of the sky. We are literally fighting earthquakes. We are fighting recession. We are fighting riots. We are fighting all of these localized things that, while they may be influenced by the grand beyond, the fact is, if you were doing things right, you weren't standing in line in 2021 for ass wipe at Walmart for a respiratory disease. You weren't standing in line for toilet paper because you were doing things right to begin with. So just remember, the time for training is over. We are now at war. Whatever you want to call that. Stop looking at the grand who is it and start looking at what's happening right now in my sphere of influence. Focus on what you can actually change. Local school boards, local sheriff, local county commissioners. Focus on that, because the President of the United States will never change anything for you. The Congress will never change anything for you for the better. Who will change things for you is your local elected officials, the people you send your children off to, and the people who hold the purse strings at your local level. Focus on that, stack your stuff, train every day like they want to kill you, and understand that we're already in it. The time for training is over. Now is the time for action.
Bobby Spags, thank you, brother. We'll see you in a few months at the Midwest Preparedness Project's Spring Festival at the Bloomington West Campgrounds in Lawrence, Kansas, this year, May 5th through the 10th. My prepper brothers and sisters, eyes on me. Listen up. We ripped this Band-Aid off really quick. Not painless, but you'll survive. Obama's slipped confession. Trump's war cry for full declassification. Russia's alien bodies, Elizondo's ticking clock, and the underwater trans-medium crafts circling our coastlines like stealth fighters. This is the moment that we find out if the world cracks or stays solid. If it should crack, panic will sweep like wildfire. Shelves will empty within hours. Grids will go black. Predators, human or otherwise, will hunt around the clock. We don't get to sit this one out. We don't get to hope that someone else comes and saves us. Check your water, supplies, gear. Check your skills and knowledge. Check your courage. When the government finally admits that humans have been livestock and fodder for non-human intelligent beings all this time, we will be the storm they fear. We will vanish into the shadows, hold the line when necessary, but we will get it done, and we will survive and thrive as if we've been planning for this for years. Stay prepped, stay happy. Thanks for listening, and good night.